This is AI Biz Stories, real business history, told through the decisions that built empires and the ones that destroyed them. If you find stories like this valuable, consider subscribing. It helps us create more deep-dive documentaries like this one. In 2007, if you owned a mobile phone, there was a very good chance it was a Nokia. Sturdy, reliable, the kind of device you could drop on concrete, pick up, and keep talking. Nokia controlled over 40% of the global phone market. In some countries, it was closer to 70%. Governments trusted it. Teenagers loved it. Executives relied on it. The Finnish giant looked untouchable. But on January 9, 2007, in San Francisco, a man in a black turtleneck walked onto a stage and quietly began dismantling that empire. Steve Jobs introduced a phone with no buttons, a computer you could hold, a new idea of what mobile could be. He called it simply
iPhone. Today,
inside Nokia's headquarters in Espoo, reactions ranged from shock to denial. Engineers who had pushed for touchscreens and modern software felt a knot in their stomachs. Senior managers were less impressed. It's just a toy. It won't survive a fall. Operators will never accept Apple's control. And for a moment, it looked like they were right. Nokia's numbers in 2007 stayed strong. Revenue passed 50 billion euros. From the outside, the empire still looked invincible. But the cracks had already formed, and within a few years, Nokia would lose almost everything, selling its phone business to Microsoft for just 5.44 billion euros. How does a company that once defined an entire category lose it almost entirely in under a decade? This is the story of how Apple killed Nokia and how Nokia helped it happen. To understand Nokia's fall, you first have to understand its rise. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, Nokia wasn't just a phone manufacturer. It was a cultural symbol of durability, quality, and progress. From the iconic 3210 and 3310 to the business communicator series and stylish phones for younger audiences, Nokia dominated every market segment. By 2007, nearly 4 out of every 10 phones sold worldwide came from Finland. This wasn't luck. Nokia operated one of the most efficient supply chains in the world. Its factories could launch dozens of models every year, each one fine-tuned for specific regions, carriers, and price points. You wanted a rugged, affordable phone for emerging markets? Nokia had it. A business device with email and a keyboard? Nokia had it. A stylish phone with interchangeable covers? Nokia had that too. At the core of its early smart devices was Symbian OS. Nokia co-founded the platform in 1998 and later took full control. On paper, Nokia owned both the hardware and the software stack. But success created a dangerous belief that the future would look just like the past. Inside the company, years of dominance led to a quiet sense of invincibility. Nokia had survived price wars, copycats, and countless competitors. The logic seemed simple. If the world wanted phones, Nokia would build them, ship them, and win. The problem was that Nokia still saw the market as phones, not as pocket computers, and that blind spot would soon become fatal. Long before the iPhone, Nokia's own engineers had already seen the future. They built devices like the Nokia 770 Internet tablet and the Communicator series, early attempts at pocket-sized computers with larger screens, web browsing, and email. Inside the R&D labs, prototypes with touchscreens and modern software platforms were already taking shape. A Linux-based system called MIMO was in development as early as the mid-2000s. Engineers sent warnings up the chain. Keypads were limiting what users could do. Symbian was fragmented and difficult to develop for. The future was touch, full-screen interfaces, and applications. But Nokia's structure worked against itself. The company was divided into internal fiefdoms: Symbian teams, MIMO teams, hardware groups, operator sales units, each fighting for resources and roadmap priority. For executives, the incentives were simple: ship more models, keep carriers happy, protect existing revenue. A radical platform shift meant risk, and Nokia didn't do risk. Attempts to modernize Symbian turned into a slow-motion disaster. Each new device added another layer of customization, another UI framework, another compatibility issue. Developers struggled with fragmentation, different screen sizes, inconsistent APIs, and painfully outdated tools. Inside Nokia, many leaders still believed that consumers didn't want complex smartphones. They thought people wanted affordable, sturdy devices with long battery life. And in a way, they were right. For a while. But the world was shifting. Mobile was moving from voice and SMS to data, apps, and services. And while Nokia debated internally, Apple was about to redefine what a phone could be. Steve Jobs didn't set out to build a better phone. He set out to put a tiny, intuitive computer into people's pockets. The iPhone, launched in 2007, was based on a few bold ideas: a large multi-touch screen with no physical keyboard, a fluid user interface powered by a desktop-class operating system, a full web browser, not the stripped-down, mobile internet everyone else offered. Where Nokia saw phones as hardware with software on top, Apple saw the device as just one part of a larger, unified system. Hardware, operating system, apps, content, billing, and updates, all controlled by Apple, end to end. And then, in 2008, Apple launched the App Store. That single decision rewrote the entire industry. Third-party developers could now build software for the iPhone, sell it globally, and reach millions with almost no friction. Every new app made the iPhone more valuable. More users attracted more developers. More developers attracted more users. The ecosystem flywheel was born. For Nokia, the contrast was becoming impossible to ignore. Symbian development was painful. Documentation was scattered. Performance was inconsistent. And there was no unified app marketplace with the simplicity and reach of Apple's. While Apple shipped a small number of polished, high-end models, Nokia flooded the market with dozens of slightly different devices, each requiring custom engineering, each adding more fragmentation. To consumers, the difference was obvious. On one side, a sleek glass slab with intuitive gestures, clean updates, and a rapidly expanding library of apps. On the other, a small screen, clunky navigation, and software that felt a generation behind. Apple didn't just launch a product, it changed what people expected from a phone. And once that shift happened, Nokia's greatest strengths began to look like weaknesses. At first, Nokia's numbers didn't collapse overnight. Feature phones still sold in the hundreds of millions. Emerging markets still wanted cheap, durable devices, but beneath the surface, the smartphone battle was already being lost. Nokia's response to the iPhone and to the fast-rising wave of Android competitors was slow, fragmented, and increasingly desperate. The company kept investing in Symbian, trying to force it into the touchscreen era with devices like the Nokia 5800 Express Music. The results felt outdated on day one. Resistive touchscreens, laggy interfaces, and user experiences that looked years behind the iPhone. Leadership turmoil only made things worse. Olli-Pekka Kalasvuo, the CEO who followed Jorma Ollila, struggled to articulate a clear smartphone strategy. And in 2010, Nokia hired Stephen Elop, the company's first non-Finnish CEO. Meanwhile, Apple and Android manufacturers were capturing the profitable high-end segment of the market. Nokia was falling back into the low-margin bottom, where volume mattered, but influence didn't. Inside the company, paralysis took over. Should Nokia double down on Symbian, accelerate its Linux-based Maemo and MeeGo platforms, or partner with someone else entirely? Every choice had political costs. Every delay made things worse. And consumers, along with developers, were voting with their wallets. By 2010 and 2011, the unthinkable had become reality. Nokia was no longer setting the standard. It was trying to catch up and losing ground in public, in real time. In early 2011, Stephen Elop sent an internal memo that would become infamous. It would be known as the Burning Platform Memo. In it, Elop compared Nokia to a man standing on a burning oil rig in the North Sea, forced to jump into icy water just to survive. The message was brutal. Symbian was failing, competitors were surging, and Nokia's position was deteriorating fast. Days later, Nokia announced a strategic partnership with Microsoft. Symbian and MeeGo would be phased out. Future Nokia smartphones would run Windows Phone. On paper, it sounded logical. Nokia would provide hardware expertise, global distribution, and a trusted brand. Microsoft would provide a modern operating system, developer tools, and a long-term platform vision. Together, they would build a third ecosystem to challenge Apple and Android. In reality, it was a bet made from a position of weakness. For consumers and operators, the message was confusing. Existing Symbian devices were suddenly legacy. MeeGo, a platform many engineers believed in, was effectively dead on arrival. And Windows Phone, although elegant, lacked apps, lacked developers, and lacked momentum. The transition years were brutal. As Nokia moved away from the platforms it had spent years building, its market share continued to erode. The benefits of the Microsoft partnership were still years away, and time was something Nokia no longer had. By September 2013, the situation was unsustainable. Nokia agreed to sell its Devices and Services division to Microsoft for just 5.44 billion euros. For Finland, it was a national shock. Nokia had once driven a quarter of the country's economic growth between 1998 and 2007. Now, its phone business was gone. And the Microsoft plan didn't work either. Windows Phone never gained meaningful market share. Within a few years, Microsoft would write down most of the deal. The empire didn't just fall, it was sold off, and then erased from the smartphone landscape. So how did a company that once controlled more than 40% of the global phone market collapse within a single decade? Not because Nokia lacked talent, not because it lacked technology. Nokia had the engineers, it had the prototypes, it had the vision. The collapse came from something deeper and far more dangerous. First, the innovator's dilemma. Nokia's core business relied on selling huge volumes of feature phones. A radical shift to a new platform threatened margins, carrier relationships, and predictable revenue. So leadership hesitated until it was too late. Second, complacency. Years of dominance created a belief that the market moved on Nokia's timeline. Early smartphones felt good enough, and the growing pain of Symbian was underestimated. Third, culture and structure. Internal fiefdoms, misaligned incentives, political battles. Nokia couldn't execute a clean, decisive pivot. While Apple focused on a single flagship, Nokia tried to be everything to everyone. And fourth, ecosystems. Nokia still thought in terms of hardware, but Apple and later Android manufacturers thought in terms of platforms. Hardware mattered, but ecosystems won. Apple didn't kill Nokia alone. The world changed, and Nokia couldn't change with it. For today's market leaders, the warning is clear. Your biggest risk isn't that you fail to see the next wave. Your biggest risk is seeing it and still being unable to jump before the platform burns. If you enjoyed this breakdown of how Nokia's mobile empire collapsed, consider liking the video and subscribing to AI Biz Stories. It helps us grow and brings you more deep dive business documentaries every week. Thanks for watching.